Horror films have never been known for their happy endings. Ever since the genre's earliest days, horror cinema has used downbeat endings and storylines to hammer home its themes and ramp up the fear factor. So if you put a horror flick on, you can usually expect plenty of darkness and tragedy. That's a given, and when horror films have a genuinely happy ending, that often feels like quite the plot twist. Having said that, some horror movies go quite a bit further than that. Some go above and beyond to deliver harrowing, miserable narratives that provoke the sort of emotional devastation normally reserved for downbeat dramas or historical films about real-life tragedies. And the following 10 movies are great examples of this. I'm Sean Ferry for What Culture Horror, and here are 10 great horror movies that will crush your soul. Number 10, Nosferatu 2024. Nosferatu was, to no one's surprise, an incredible piece of cinema, a stunningly beautiful gothic nightmare featuring awards-worthy performances from a consummate cast. It seems like everything director Robert Eggers touches turns to gold, and in an era where vampires have been heavily undermined by the nonsense of the Twilight movies, it's so refreshing to see a vampire flick where vampires are actually, scary. Is it as good as the 1922 original? Well, not quite. But it does outclass that 1920s masterpiece in one key way. It's a much more emotional film. Essentially, the story of Nosferatu is a tragedy in which the embodiment of evil wreaks untold havoc, and in order to stop him, an innocent woman must sacrifice herself. Eggers seemed to understand this, and Nosferatu really emphasises the tragedy of the story, while also adding in the harrowing elements, like Count Orlok, played by Bill Skarsgård, who deserved to be nominated for an Oscar for his performance, killing 2 young children and their mother, played by Emma Corrin. Once again, this movie is a tragedy, and it's a great one at that. Number 9. The Wailing. The Wailing is an enormously impressive horror epic from South Korea, which centres around a mysterious haunting occurring at a remote South Korean village. A demon is causing people to snap and slaughter their families, and police officer Jong-gu, played by Kwak Do-won, tries to save his daughter, who has become one of the possessed. At 2.5 hours, The Wailing is longer than most horror films, and it really pulls the viewer in, establishing its characters and its story world with impressive detail. It's an emphatic, involving viewing experience, and therefore its relentlessly tragic events will hit audiences right in the feels. By the time the ending comes along, most will feel drained, downcast, and utterly exhausted. After Jong-gu pursues the wrong suspect, the real demon causes his possessed daughter to kill him, his wife, and his mother-in-law. Evil wins and the good guys fall. You wanted a happy ending? Denied. Number 8. Funny Games. Michael Haneke, the great Austrian director, is a man who specialises in making films that mess you up. From the emotional devastation of Amour to the paranoia-inflicted Cash, he has created many thoroughly unsettling pieces of cinema, and his one true horror offering to date wasn't much different. Funny Games is a stark, simple scream of pure horror in which 2 young men, played by Arno Frisch and Frank Gearing, go to a holiday home and proceed to subject an innocent family to a series of sadistic games. Why are the duo doing this? That's not a question Haneke seems to have any interest in answering. The 2 psychopaths frequently break the fourth wall and speak to the audience, implicating the audience in their aberrant crimes. And then, just when it seems like the family has finally overpowered them, one of the killers takes a remote control and literally rewinds the film in order to prevent this. They then kill the entire family, including the kid, and head to another house to start anew. Plenty of horror movies have evil winning, yet few render the good guys as completely powerless as this. It's a nasty movie in the best sort of way. Haneke later remade it himself in English, but given that his remake is a shot-for-shot redo, you can put on any version and be comfortable in the knowledge that you're in for a feel-bad treat. Number 7. Train to Busan. Here's another South Korean horror. Within that country, there's a strong tradition of melodramatic storytelling, and in any South Korean genre film, you can usually expect it to be the case that there'll be some sort of emotional heroic sacrifice, or that many characters will die. In the case of Train to Busan, a zombie flick set mostly on a high-speed train, nearly everyone bites the dust and only 2 characters are left alive by the end. Everyone else dies in ways that are often frustratingly avoidable, with many of these courtesy of one of the most purely unlikable horror movie villains in recent memory, a selfish businessman played by Kim Il-sung, who keeps pushing other people into the path of the zombies. At the end of the day, while Train to Busan also deserves praise for its brilliant action and cast, Perhaps the key to its success is just how dramatically rich it is, and how well it balances genre thrills with a devastating emotional wallop. Having said that, despite how sad the movie is, it's also immensely rewatchable, and you might find yourself going back for more. Number 6. Don't Look Now. British cinema has gained a reputation for being bleak and depressing over the years. While Old Blighty has plenty of joyous flicks to offer, there's no denying that those aisles have produced some really hard-hitting material over the decades, and British horror is no different. Don't Look Now, which is arguably the greatest British horror film of them all, is a great example of this. It's one of the saddest horror films you'll ever watch. It tells the tragic story of John and Laura Baxter, Donald Sutherland and Julie Christie, a married couple whose young daughter drowns in a pond near their home. Shortly after this, the grieving couple travels to Venice, where John is restoring an ancient church. He soon begins to experience mysterious sightings and visions connected to his lost daughter, but he fails to understand them until it's too late. From the harrowing opening death to the infamous, shocking ending in which John is murdered by a serial killer he mistakes for his daughter, Don't Look Now is a hauntingly powerful meditation on grief, one made even more upsetting by the stellar performances of Sutherland and Christie, who give heartbreaking performances as the grieving parents. Essentially, Don't Look Now is one of those masterpieces that many people won't want to see more than once, and that's more than fair enough. Number 5. I Saw the Devil. Hello again, South Korea. Here's another South Korean horror flick that doesn't so much push the envelope as shred it, and it's another one that goes to places of depravity few Western horrors would ever venture to. There are many bleak revenge movies out there, but nothing beats I Saw the Devil. This is probably the nastiest, angriest, and cruelest revenge movie of them all. Secret Service agent Kim Soo-hyung, Squid Game's Lee Byung-hung, seeks revenge on the serial killer Jang Kyung-chul, played by Old Boy's Choi Min-sik, who killed his fiancée, and discovers the futility and misery of revenge the hard way. His crusade of vengeance gets several other innocent people, including the sister of his late fiancée, killed, and his many deranged acts of violence mean that he gradually starts to resemble the very man he's hunting. It's a long, brutal film filled with grief, pain, and sadistically brutal violence, and the genuinely Oscar-worthy performances from its leads make it that much more unbearably intense. Number 4. Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, is one utterly horrible film. That mustn't be misinterpreted as a statement on its quality. It's a tremendous, low-budget horror with chilling cinema verite cinematography and 2 incredible lead performances from Michael Rooker, playing the eponymous serial killer, and Tom Towles, playing his accomplice. Horror cinema is filled with serial killers, and they're usually heightened, unrealistic characters, but not here. This is a grounded and realistic look at evil that director John McNaughton films a bit like a documentary. As such, the horrifying events of this movie, including many, many brutal murders and even an incestuous sexual assault at one point, feel unbearably real. Interestingly, Henry is less gory and exploitative than many similar movies, with much of the violence taking place off-screen or being shown from a distance. Henry avoids ever feeling gratuitous, and through the power of suggestion, it creates a suffocating atmosphere of dread and menace. Number 3. The Mist. That ending, that's why it comes up as often as it does. The Mist tells the story of some townsfolk trapped in a supermarket while a mysterious mist rolls over their town, a mist filled with sinister and deadly creatures. Throughout its runtime, it's not a cheerful film, and it presents a pessimistic view of humanity as those in a supermarket succumb to paranoia and violence. Having said that, the finale turns everything up to 11. Protagonist David, played by Thomas Jane, his son and 3 other survivors leave the supermarket and drive through the mist, eventually running out of gas. David mercy kills the group with his 4 remaining bullets, and then heads out into the mist, waiting to be killed by the monsters, only for the military to emerge out of the mist. The group was seconds away from rescue. Without question, this is one of the cruelest and darkest endings, not just in the horror genre, but perhaps in cinema itself, made even more harrowing by Thomas Jane's fantastic performance and the use of the Host of Seraphim by Dead Can Dance, one of the most haunting pieces of music you'll ever hear, as the background music. Number 2. Carrie. Carrie is one of the best horror movies of all time. Ironically enough, it isn't actually scary outside of the dream sequence ending, but even that's probably lost its fear factor due to the countless imitations, and its power instead comes from it having one of the all-time best horror movie stories, not to mention one of the very saddest. If there's ever been a horror film that felt like a Shakespearean tragedy, It's Carrie, a bleak and haunting revenge thriller in which every major character but one dies and the lone survivor is left with everlasting trauma. This is a shattering representation of the real-life horror story that is growing up, and it features many difficult-to-watch scenes involving child abuse and sadistic high school bullying. Carrie is an exceptional piece of storytelling. Everything about its heartbreaking conclusion feels earned, and even though Carrie, played by the wonderful Sissy Spacek, commits many terrible acts of violence, she still keeps the audience's sympathy and feels like the story's main victim. This was a hard thing to pull off, but Carrie makes it look easy. Carrie also offers a reminder that horror is more than just a vehicle for frights. It's also a genre that tells many remarkable rich stories, which reflect the world around us in devastating ways. Number 1, Pulse. And finally, this might be an obscure example to end this list on, but as anyone who's seen it knows all too well, it's justified. Pulse, directed by Japanese horror legend Kiyoshi Kurosawa, is among the bleakest horror movies there will ever be. Most horror films focus on scaring their viewers, and though Pulse does have some shattering frights, the key to its power is that it's so utterly depressing and nihilistic. It's an apocalyptic horror that tells two parallel stories of ghosts using the internet to invade the world of the living. For, as they explain to the two main characters, death is eternal loneliness. Pulse is a really great movie, but for most viewers, it's going to be too upsetting to watch more than once. After all, although Pulse does have some memorably brilliant scares, its depictions of death and mental illness are even more terrifying. This is what makes Pulse one of the most uniquely harrowing and soul-crushing movies in any genre of the 21st century.